Welcome to Curious Lorenzo, a podcast where I research in real time topics that I'm curious about. So, this is episode 2, and I'm going to depart from the cities researching a city and geography and states, cities, countries, things like that. Those are easy for me. I've enjoyed doing that. Basically all my life, most of my life, since I was a young kid. I mentioned in the last episode, my grandpa had encyclopedias, and I would spend hours laying on his living room floor in his like 70s, style carpet, like brown and black blotches of kind of shaggy carpet. And I would just research and just be curious while looking at these different maps and reading about different cities. And so that comes naturally to me. So I'll probably do more of that. But I am curious about other things that I basically have a little understanding of, but might not just gotten around. I just didn't get around to researching or studying. And some of those things are, philosophical in nature. Some of them have to deal with society and how people operate. I studied economics in college, and I think what a lot of people don't really understand about economics is it's mostly just understanding human behavior and human decisions and how we make choices. And that's economics. A lot of people think it's just money, but it's really like, how do people make decisions and how do people, decide how to live their lives? But the topic that I'm thinking about right now is tribalism. So the reason I'm thinking about tribalism is because of the state of our country. I don't know. Well, so yeah, it seems like we've had this sort of tribal mentality, especially in politics, for a long time. So I was going to say that it seems like it's been more apparent, more pronounced, I guess, in the last 4 years with the election of Donald Trump as president. But honestly, from my point of view, and I guess this is where I can speak from the most, obviously, is my point of view, is that we've been really divided for a long time. I would say George W. Bush was a very divisive president as well. Not even close to the degree, I think, as Donald Trump. I think George W. Bush tried to be presidential, quote unquote presidential, I guess. He at least showed that maybe he possibly cared. I don't know. This is just, like I said, my point of view, my thoughts. I don't know if this is what's true, but it seems like he actually did care about all Americans. I watched a YouTube video recently. I spent a lot of time on YouTube, I guess. But I watched a YouTube video where he was, I don't know if there's an official title of the speech, but he was congratulating Barack Obama for becoming president of the United States, and he acknowledged that this is a big historical moment, having our first black president. And he was very graceful about handing over the power of the presidency to the other party. And honestly, like I don't imagine that Donald Trump is going to hand over the presidency gracefully if he loses the presidency, which, if all polls are looking like if the outcome is how the polls are looking, then that's going to be the case. So, but it does seem like we've been in this divisive state for a really long time, and in my view, it looks like this divisiveness has its roots in the, and this is my opinion. It seems like, because this is the background that I come from, I guess, it seems like the divisiveness is rooted in the evangelical church. George W. Bush was notably evangelical, and I think probably truthfully evangelical, unlike Donald Trump, who seems like he's pretending to be evangelical to cater to the people who he wants to control. But George W. Bush had his base who was evangelical Christians, and then there was this other side who are Democrats and folks who maybe don't subscribe to an evangelical religion, or maybe don't agree with a lot of the I guess morality judgments of Christianity. So you can see this. I've seen this divide since the Bush presidency, and I'm sure. I mean, that's just my memory, because I became an adult during Bush's first term. I was not old enough to vote for Bush in the first time. Was I? Yeah, I think it was the Bush-Gore presidency. That was 2000. I was 17 when that election happened, so I was not able to vote. But I see that divide since I've been an adult, and I'm sure it's been there before. There's sides, and right now you can see these sides forming. And on the left, it's reproductive rights, it's LGBTQ rights, it's Black Lives Matter, it's pro-immigrant. I mean, again, from my point of view, I don't know what somebody who has a different point of view might think that the left looks like, but it's pro-immigrant. There's also some other things that come along with being on the left that you subscribe to. But from my point of view on the right, it's, they want, I guess, religious freedom. They want gun rights. They want, patriotism. And it's like the America First deal. But there's other things that I see happening in this tribe, which are anti-science, and we need to put businesses before the environment and before our planet. Maybe we can drive, larger vehicles that use more gasoline and diesel fuel, and maybe we don't really like what electric cars stand for. So you see these divisions building up, and then on the right you have evangelical Christians who are still around. And on the left, you have maybe atheism, and maybe you have agnosticism, and maybe you have some ex-evangelical Christians. I know I've on Twitter. That's a Twitter thread. A group of Twitter folks that I follow are ex-evangelicals. I think there's even a hashtag ex-evangelical, or the hashtag Church2, who are these folks who were one time in the evangelical church. But there's a whole movement of those people. That's another interesting topic. I think that I could even go into, but there's like the liturgists and the liturgist podcasts, and Mike McHargue, Science Mike. There's those group of folks who were evangelical and maybe have changed their viewpoints. So that's kind of where I see this tribalism, and it's very deep rooted, from what it seems. And I know of some people's families who are definitely disagreeing, and it's a very awkward time it can be right now. I mean, it is for me. If I spend time with any family who might be who maybe we disagree with politically, it could be uncomfortable, because you don't want to bring up those things, but these things are what are close to our close to us as people. These ideas, these beliefs, these ideologies are really tied to our character and to our person, like who we are. So it's an interesting time, especially approaching an election, that these tribalistic sort of qualities are coming out. But I want to find out more about tribalism. I want to learn what tribalism is, how it's, what causes it, why are we tribalistic, why is it so hard for humans to agree? Like, humans are we're the only animal that I think really has this. I mean, well, maybe not. I know that there are, there's prides of lions, and they can identify. So I guess I'm wrong. I'm wrong in real time. So this is what this podcast is about. I'm wrong in real time. But maybe, yeah, I guess animals do that. There's prides of lions, and they mark their territories, and they know which lion is part of the family. And I know elephants can do that too. Elephants are really smart. Pods of dolphins. Yeah, so I guess we do this. It's an animal thing. But I think humans do it really well. For good or bad, I guess. So let's take a look. I guess I'm going to start with Wikipedia. I just Wikipedia'd tribalism. And here's what it says, the opening little paragraph. Tribalism is the state of being organized or advocating for tribes or tribal lifestyles. Human evolution has primarily occurred in small groups, as opposed to mass societies, and people naturally maintain a social network. That's interesting, a social network. I'm automatically thinking right now about the social networks that we've created online, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Twitch. What's that other one? TikTok. These social networks where we can sort of be tribal. We're like behind a veil, and we can say whatever we want to whoever we want. We can be hurtful because it's harder, I guess, to see the humanity in other people when we're on Facebook. And that's, social networks. Okay. In popular culture, tribalism may also refer to a way of thinking or behaving in which people are loyal to their social group above all else. Or derogatorily, a type of discrimination or animosity based upon group differences. Okay. I want to read that first part of that sentence again. Tribalism may also refer to a way of thinking or behaving in which people are loyal to their social group above all else. That is interesting to me. Above all else. Right now, if you have a very, very devout follower of Donald Trump, they are loyal to that Trump. And I'm using Trump. I guess you could flip it and you can say, and here's what's interesting about folks on the left is they're not loyal to any certain person. It doesn't seem like people I run into who are very devoutly Trump or devoutly Republican. They always, not always, but many times they'll tell me, oh, Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden this or. But a lot of times it's like Nancy Pelosi or AOC or Bernie Sanders or this or that. I'm not offended if they say Nancy Pelosi is a bad person. I don't know Nancy Pelosi, but I'm not like, I don't feel offended when somebody says Nancy Pelosi did this or that. It's really interesting. I don't have a certain, and I guess I'm revealing my bias, but I don't have a tie to any certain person, which it seems like folks on the Republican end of things are very, very, very devoutly following Donald Trump. So this social group is loyal. They're loyal to the social group above all else. And this is another thing that it seems like folks are discarding their faith, their religion, to follow this Trump idea. And I think I'm being tribalistic right now, actually. This is what's kind of ironic about this episode. I'm trying to learn more about it, but I'm being tribalistic. But this is just what it seemed. This is my observations. People are throwing out their faith. People are throwing out their family, and they're discrediting, and they're completely ignoring the voices of even close family, because the tribe rules above all else. That's interesting to me. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. And this Wikipedia article is it looks like it's separated into 8 categories. So there's definitions, social structure, types, concept evolution. That's what I want to learn about. I want to know the origins, like why are we tribalistic? Negative outcomes. See also references and external links. So this is not a super long article, so it should be pretty easy. All right, definition. The word tribe can be defined to mean an extended kin, group, or clan with a common ancestor, or can also be described as a group with shared interests, lifestyles, and habits. The proverb, birds of a feather flock together, describes homophily. Okay, so I'm going to hover over homophily. What does this mean? Homophily is the tendency of individuals to associate and bond with similar others, as in the proverb, birds of a feather flock together. The presence of homophily has been discovered in a vast array of network studies. Okay, so homophily is a tendency of people to associate with similar others. Yeah, so I can see that. I can feel that even. I can feel that. In New Mexico, we are, I guess, somewhat diverse. Most people who live in at least in my circle are Hispanic or white. So my wife is white, I'm Hispanic, so we spend time with her family, we spend time with my family. And if I were to be honest, I think I can even feel that difference, that tendency for homophily, I guess, even when we're with family. So when we're spending time with my family, it's super chaotic. There's no structure. Everybody's just eating whatever they want to eat. There's a buffet style table, and people just start grabbing food and talking, and everybody's loud. There might be people smoking in the corner, or there might be somebody that comes to the party smelling like weed. There might be different boyfriends here and there. Maybe they're a good person. Maybe, I mean, good person. Maybe they've been into some crime. Maybe they haven't. I don't know. It's kind of a wild card when you come to a gathering at my family. But when I'm in that situation, I don't really feel I don't feel that uncomfortable. I can just sit around and I'm like, oh yeah, so and so smells like weed or whatever. Like there's, I don't know. Like it's just kind of I don't know if I've been sort of trained or conditioned just to feel that way, but that's how I feel in those situations. I don't feel uncomfortable. I feel like I belong, I guess, in some weird kind of messed up way. So I don't know, but on the flip side, if I'm hanging out with my wife's family, it's very structured, not as loud. Nobody smells like weed. And there's discussion and there's caring and there's stories and there's all of this. And in this situation, oddly, like I feel like I should feel like I'm not, I should feel like I'm not, I should feel like I'm comfortable. But in many of those times I feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like this is like, it's too perfect, I guess. And I don't know if that's because of our difference in race or if it's homophily, tendency of individuals to associate and bond with similar others. because I am a lot different than my wife's family. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like I'm just kind of soaking this in right now as I'm talking about it. But you can even see this in groups of people too. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but white people tend to hang out with other white people. And it seems like, at least by observation, black people tend to hang out with other black people. Hispanic people tend to hang out with other Hispanic people. Asian with other Asian people. Like, if you're from the same community, you're hanging out with that. So, I mean, maybe that just happens to be because you're family and that's who you're with. But I think the Disney, afternoon teenage special or whatever, where there's a black person, an Asian person, and a white person, and a Hispanic person, and they all happen to be friends. Like that is, I don't think that's likely. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. But this homophily kind of says that we tend to hang out and bond with similar others. And I think this similar could mean not just your race, but it could also be your religion. Christians like to hang out with other Christians. Liberals, I don't know what that means. Liberals, like liberal people, like maybe more progressive people, like to hang out with more progressive people. Like a liberal person, like a self-identified like progressive person isn't going to want to hang out with a Trumper, and vice versa. They're not going to want to spend time together. They don't want to bond together. So homophily is a tendency of individuals to associate and bond with similar others. So that could be your religion, right? So you don't see a priest, a rabbi, what's the other one? Priest, rabbi, and I was going to say a wizard. No, not a wizard. You don't see these different religious guys hanging out most of the time. Usually you'll see a group of priests. Maybe they're taking a tour across the country, checking out the different churches, bonding. They're part of the same Catholic. Is it diocese? Is that the group of people? The group of people in like a region, or you see a group of people at a Christian college. They're all Christians, or a group of rabbis walking around Brooklyn, New York. I've seen all of this, but you don't see very often, or at least you don't notice it. Like a Christian, a Jew, and a Muslim hanging out. So, yeah, so it could be religious. It could be ideology, and political parties. Like I'm at a Trump rally, I don't think you would see a single Prius-driving liberal or progressive wanting to hear what President Trump has to say. Like that's just not going to happen. And the same thing, you're not going to have a Second Amendment Donald Trump fan attend a Joe Biden town hall and just really get to know what Joe Biden has to say. That's not going to happen. All right, let's keep going. So the proverb, birds of a feather flock together, describes homophily, the human tendency to form friendship networks with people in similar occupations, interests, and habits. Some tribes can be located in geographically proximate areas, like villages or bands, though telecommunications enables groups of people to form digital tribes using tools like social networking websites. So that is pretty important right now, I think, because we have formed these pretty strong tribal ties. Tribal ties digitally through social media and through the internet. Right off the bat, I'm thinking about QAnon, the 2chan or 4chan kind of conspiracy theory board. And that has allowed a group of people to form this really strong tie. The other thing I'm thinking about is Facebook and people on Facebook that are able to form strong ties. There's also Reddit. Reddit is a community of people, and I feel like Reddit tends to be more on the left, more kind of liberal in thinking. And if somebody says anything it says anything that is like sort of right wing or right leaning or conservative, I think it gets downvoted. So you are punished with downvotes if you say anything that kind of disagrees with that that sort of general consensus idea of anti right wing. So yeah, I think definitely in the internet, social media websites, different programs, different radio programs and podcasts have definitely formed followings around it. And that's another thing. All right, let's keep going. In terms of conformity, tribalism has been defined as a subjectivity or way of being, social frame in which communities are bound socially beyond immediate birth ties by the dominance of various modalities to face-to-face and object integration. I'm sorry. In terms of conformity, tribalism has been defined as a subjectivity or way of being, social frame in which communities are bound socially beyond immediate birth ties by the dominance of various modalities of face-to-face and object integration. And this is from a book by James Paul. And this was cited, the citation is from a book from Paul James called Globalism, Nationalism, Tribalism, Bringing Theory Back In. So this tribalism has kind of risen above just blood ties and family ties and ties from our family and our local tribe, like our village from what would have been back in the day, but it has grown into something new because technology has allowed this to happen. Technology has allowed us to connect with people who maybe think like we do across the country, across the United States. And so it's definitely grown. It's now not isolated to your own individual tribe. All right. I'm going to read the rest of this definition, and then I'll move on to the social structure. Ontologically, tribalism is oriented around the valences of analogy, genealogy, and mythology. That means that customary tribes have their social foundations in some variation of these tribal orientations, while often taking on traditional practices. For example, Abrahamic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and modern practices including monetary exchange, mobile communications, and modern education. So that means, I think I'm interpreting this as tribalism has sort of taken on our faiths, and it's been sort of retrofitted to our modern society, and is deep rooted in these Abrahamic religions. So I don't know, I might be wrong on that. All right, let's move forward. The social structure. The social structure of a tribe can vary greatly from case to case, but the relatively small size of customary tribes makes social life in such tribes usually involve a relatively undifferentiated role structure with few significant political or economic distinctions between individuals. A tribe often refers to itself using its own language's word for people, and refers to other neighboring tribes with various epithets. Epithets, how do you say that? Let's ask my Mac.
Epithets.
For example, the term Inuit translates to people. Okay, let's look up epithets. So epithets, an adjective or descriptive phrase expressing a quality characteristic of the person or thing mentioned. An adjective or descriptive phrase expressing a quality characteristic of a person or thing mentioned. Here's the example. Old men are often unfairly awarded the epithet dirty. So it's just an adjective that describes somebody. So bleeding heart liberal, or I saw on Twitter somebody said a smooth-brained Trump supporter. So definitely Twitter is a place where you can find tribalism deep-rooted. I tend to follow the liberal circles, so I hear all of the tribalistic sort of ideas, but I do follow some conservative followers too, and they're kind of saying things too, and they're assigning these adjectives to describe the other, and it's definitely not nice most of the time. All right. I'm going to go over types, and then I'll take a break and then talk about the evolution, where this comes from. So types. Tribalism implies the possession of a strong cultural or ethnic identity that separates one member of the group from the members of another group. So I'm going to read that sentence again because I think that is important. Tribalism implies the possession of a strong cultural or ethnic identity that separates one member of a group from the members of another group. The possession of a strong cultural or ethnic identity. So there's a strong cultural or ethnic identity. So you can see this play out right in front of our faces right now. It seems like more sort of like Hispanic, Black, and then more kind of progressive people are on the left, and on the right, and I don't even want to say like progressive, more people of color is like kind of the hot word right now, but more people of color on the left, and on the right, you have, it seems like majority white people. Like our country, I think, is majority white people. But it also happens to be that the folks on the right they feel bad feelings, negative feelings towards Black Lives Matter, and they'll often respond to Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. It also is interesting to me that it appears that people on the right are anti-immigration, and it's not like they're anti-immigration from Canada or anti-immigration from like Europe. But when you talk about Mexico, or when you talk about Central America, or when you talk about Asian countries, it seems like folks on the right are a bit more anti-immigration from those locations. So maybe I'm wrong about that. That's just how it seems. That's my observation. But this is sort of playing out this sentence here. Tribalism implies the possession of a strong cultural or ethnic identity that separates one member of a group from the members of another group. So, based on strong relations of proximity and kinship, members of a tribe tend to possess a strong feeling of identity. Objectively, for a customary tribal society to form, there needs to be ongoing customary organization, equity, and exchange. However, intense feelings of common identity can lead people to feel tribally connected. So these things are making people feel bonded together. Whether it be a person, I think it definitely could be a person like Donald Trump. It could be these ideas like, equality and inclusion and acceptance. That's definitely something that is bringing together people on the left. And yeah, so kinship, forming strong bonds of identity. So that's interesting there. So let me keep going. The distinction between these two definitions for tribalism, objective and subjective, is an important one because while tribal societies have been pushed to the edges of the Western world, tribalism, by the second definition, is arguably undiminished. A few writers have postulated that the human brain is hardwired towards tribalism by its evolutionary advantages, but that claim is usually linked to equating original questions of society within tribalism. Yeah, there's a lot in that sentence. Let me read that again. A few writers have postulated that the human brain is hardwired towards tribalism. So I've heard that, and there's a whole section in this article about evolution and how tribalism plays in that. But it's hardwired towards our tribalism. Our brain is. And that sort of makes sense to me because when we were in our infancy, when we were new species, we had to bond together to survive. You had to cooperate with your group of people in order to survive. And I'm thinking about this show that me and Lindsay watched. My wife Lindsay watched, called Alone, and you have these people who are alone, surviving. It's on Netflix. They're surviving in the Arctic Circle. And it's really hard for them. They have to hunt, they have to find food, they have to make a shelter, they have to make fire, they have to endure elements like the outdoor elements, and it's hard to survive. So before technology, before electricity and heating, it was difficult to survive, but if you were a group of people, a group of minds that you could put these minds together, it would be easier to survive. And you can form teams to take down a large, moose or a large whatever sort of animal that you were hunting. So those were advantageous for survival, and I think our genes might have selected for those traits in people who could work together within your tribe. And also there might have been some other neighboring tribe who was after your resources that you got. Maybe they wanted your moose because they couldn't get a moose. So maybe some people were a group of were groups that would take from others, and that's how they survived. So then there you could see like where all these genes would be selected to favor survival, whether it be protecting your tribe or forming bonds with your tribe to help with mental health and being together and feeling a sense of community and sense of love. I think that's what it comes down to really is this survival. So I think I'm going to come back to this. I think this is pretty interesting to me, so I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So I left off on the types of tribalism, and there was a sentence that I read a couple of times that kind of stuck out to me, which was, a few writers have postulated that the human brain is hardwired towards tribalism by its evolutionary advantages. But that claim is usually linked to equating original questions of society with tribalism. So it sounds like this statement is maybe contesting tribalism and human evolution. I'm not sure. This is Wikipedia. People can just throw something in there if it's cited, I guess. But this citation is from, Eric Fromm, Michael McCabe from 1970, social character in a Mexican village. So I don't know. If you want to read that book and report back, feel free. But the evolutionary piece of tribalism is really interesting to me, because for humans we've definitely advanced it in the scale of things, in the time frame of things, super fast, right? Even if you think about just 100 years ago, in 1920. I wonder how many people had electricity in 1920. In fact, I'm going to look this up. How many Americans had electricity in 1920? So this is from gizmodo.com. So I'm not sure the validity. That's hard to say. Validity. There it is. Validity. Validity of this article. But it says in 1920, 35% of American households had electricity. By 1929, 68% of Americans had electricity. If you don't count farms, 85% of Americans had electricity by the end of the 1920s. So this is pretty incredible. Like 1920, just 35% of American households had electricity. Okay, that was my school giving me a robocall telling me that flu shots were available. So podcast interruptions, fun. Anyways, yeah, so in 1920, 35% of American households had electricity. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because over time, in the scale of things, humans, technology-wise, have advanced in huge leaps and bounds. And we no longer are isolated to our small tribes. And we have now been able to, with the introduction of electricity into our homes, and that was just 1920. And think about in the last 3 decades, what the internet has done for us, communicating and bringing our globe, our Earth, from this huge planet to compared to us, and it shrunk it down vastly. Now I can communicate with somebody across the ocean, right? I don't. I mean, I don't know how many people do. I guess we're still kind of isolated in our tribes in that sense. I'm not going to be able to talk to somebody from Argentina because there's also a language barrier. But I guess if I wanted to, I could. So yeah, I mean, we have advanced by leaps and bounds in the last century. So let's keep going. So tribalism. So this is the concept evolution. Tribalism has a very adaptive effect in human evolution. Humans are social animals and ill-equipped to live on their own. So that's kind of like what I was mentioning before, that, I was talking about that show Alone. Some people can do fine, I guess. Like in that show, they lasted, I think, a couple of months before they started to feel like they were going crazy. But we need other people to take care of us. We need, people in our community who are really good at building shelters, and we need people who are really good at, being a doctor and taking care of people. I think that there's always been these sort of roles that have been kind of assigned within communities. There has been the hunter, there has been the cook, there has been the person that cares for other people, there has been the person that maybe tells stories or maybe has encouraging words. Like there's a person in each community that kind of fills that role. And we can't live on our own. Humans don't. We are social. And I think we're definitely finding this out in this pandemic, how social we are. Because we're told that we have to be confined to our houses in order to stop the spread of this virus, in order for the greater good. We want to make sure that the virus doesn't spread. But it's hard. People are struggling, I think. I know I've been struggling. I'm working from home, and like this last week, I've been thinking about and remembering what it was like to work at my school, like being in the school building, and I kind of missed it. And I kind of missed, talking to my coworkers and conversing with other adults and being with the students, and like I missed that. Like the social piece is a big part of our lives. So we are very social. And yes, I agree with this statement that we are ill-equipped to live on our own. Sometimes I like to be alone, but that passes. Like maybe it'd be really nice. Like this is one thing of mine. Like it would be really nice to maybe wander a city that I don't know by myself without anybody else to tell me where to go or what to buy, where to eat, what to visit. Like I would love just to be in my own mind, have my headphones completely charged, and just kind of guide my own day. And I have had a day like that. I did do this in New York City. I think it was before I was married. So this must have been like maybe 2006 or something like that. But my friend was working. He was working in New York City, in the city, in Manhattan. And I had a day just to myself. I had a Metro card. I had just got my student loan disbursement, so I had a little bit of money. And I just walked the streets. I took the subway to different places. I had the entire day. I had headphones. I had music, and I just explored. And it was so cool. But by the end of the day, I remember thinking, like, I just want some social time now. Like, I'm ready to hang out with my friend and hang out with his friends. I want to get a beer with them and just like socialize. And it felt so good to get back into that social setting. Even though being alone felt good for a little bit, I didn't want to stay in that aloneness. I didn't want to stay there. So, getting back into that social setting was definitely refreshing. So we are ill-equipped to live on our own. I think it's just mentally, and then our skills. We have a vast array of different skills that each human can provide within a community. So it's definitely there. That's part of our survival. I think that is still important to our survival even today. All right. So next sentence: tribalism and social bonding help to keep individuals committed to the group, even when personal relations may fray. That keeps individuals from wandering off or joining other groups. It also leads to bullying when a tribal member is unwilling to conform to the politics of the collective. Yeah. This is some truth, I think. I think I agree with this. Tribalism and social bonding help to keep individuals committed to the group. So even when you disagree with people, you're more tied to that social group, that social setting when you start to disagree. And I can relate this to some personal experience. So I was brought up in the evangelical church, and I was in the it was in the evangelical church, and maybe even kind of still am, I guess. I'm not exactly sure, but maybe I'm not. But I was brought up in this church, and I was taught these different things as a kid. Even from a young, probably 9-10 years old, I remember going to this church, which was a very evangelical Pentecostal church, and they had this weekly sort of magazine that was distributed to all the churches every Sunday. And I remember it was election season. It was probably, it must have been 1992 when Clinton was elected. Was that 92? Let's see. Bill Clinton was elected president. Yeah, 1992. So it must have been 92. I remember this magazine that was distributed to all the churches, and it was, and I didn't know much about politics at all, but this is my first exposure to politics. Was this magazine that was talking about Bill Clinton and how he was definitely not the candidate that you wanted, and he was, that's just what I remember. I remember thinking, oh, this is interesting. Didn't think much of it, but I continued to be brought up in this landscape where it's very political. There was purity culture. There was anti-abortion. There was these ideas of marketing the church. They called it witnessing. So they wanted you to witness quote unquote witness to other people and try to get other people to join the church and bring your friends to church, and not to be, not to hold back from friends. And every friend you meet, you have to tell them about Jesus and your church and bring them to church. And then, reading your Bible and being very devout. So there's all of this that was kind of taught to me from a young age. And I remember just even as an adult, just being very committed to this group of people, this tribe, this evangelical tribe, even when, I never had any personal relations, Frey, but I definitely had my own ideas that started to take shape as I became an adult. And it was very hard for me to leave that tribe. And I think that the pandemic and Donald Trump and all of this was the kind of the last straw. And I feel like I've left. I'm still trying to figure out what my faith is. I don't know. I know this is not like where this podcast episode could have gone, I guess, but like into my own personal kind of faith, but it's my podcast, so I can do what I want. I think for a long time, I've had these ideas kind of formed as an adult, like even as far back as college, like I've had these ideas formed, but I continued to call myself a member of this tribe. And I didn't leave, even though a lot of these ideas were just really conflicting and conflicting with what my personal feelings were. And I remember even in college sort of defending the church to maybe some of my friends who were not part of the same, I guess, tribe that I was, even though I felt like maybe they're right. Like, yeah, you have a good point there, but this is how I feel. So definitely tribalism played a role there in my personal life. So I'm going to keep reading. That keeps individuals from wandering off or joining other groups. So yeah, it kept me from wandering off. It also leads to bullying when a tribal member is unwilling to conform to the politics of the collective. I don't feel like I've ever been really bullied, but I can see how this would happen. Like if there's a person who definitely disagrees with that mainline sort of tribal idea, that they would be bullied. And I think that this might happen. I think this would happen right now if we're talking about politics on the left a bit. So if you're not quote unquote woke enough, you can be canceled. You can be sort of severed from the group. You can be excommunicated, and then you have no tribe, and then you're alone. And just like I read before, nobody wants to be alone. You want to be a part of a group. We are social people. We need to be with other humans. So that's like the ultimate sort of what do you call it? Like a sentence is to be ostracated. Is that a word? Ostracated. You're going to find out on this podcast my vocabulary is definitely bad. Ostracized, that's it. A group of people have been ridiculed, ostracized, and persecuted for centuries. I was in a sentence. Exclude from a society or group. Yeah, so ostracized. And I'm okay with my bad vocabulary. I'm learning in real time. So this is what this podcast is about. So yeah, they're ostracized, and like nobody wants to be excommunicated or ostracized or banished. That feels horrible. That's, as a human, that's like the worst thing that could happen to you. So you want to agree with the collective because you don't want to be pushed out. And I think that there's some major issues, and it seems like this might be more on the left, just from my observation, than the right. Just sort of, if you don't agree with this hyper progressive liberal sort of idea, then you're done. Like you can say that, yeah, I want Medicaid for all, and everybody's entitled to health insurance, everybody's entitled to college, and I feel like my taxes should go towards the better of the community. But then if you disagree on something like abortion, like you're done. Or if you say that if you disagree with any sort of major idea on that end, it's kind of you're out. Or if you misspeak once or twice, or if you have something in your past that you're not proud of, then you're completely just ousted. So it benefits you as a social human to kind of conform and kind of be a part of this group. So, yeah. All right, let's keep going. Some scholars argue that inclusive fitness in humans involves kin selection and kin altruism, in which groups of an extended family will with shared genes help others with shared genes based on their coefficient of relationship. In other words, the amount of genes they have in common. The other scholars argue that the fictive kinship is common in human organizations, allowing non-kin members to collaborate in groups like fraternities. So this is going into race, I think. Kin selection is how much of our genes do we have in common? And I'm not sure about this, because when you talk about race and ethnicity, I'm hopeful that humans can be more together than separated. But observation, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, so you kind of see groups of people kind of hang out with other folks of their race. So it's that birds of a feather flock together sort of thing. So you have Black communities, and you have Hispanic communities, and you have white communities, and you have Asian communities and Native American communities. And sort of this idealistic Disney picture where there's just a high school where there's equal amounts of each race. Like that just doesn't exist. You're going to go to South Chicago and find mostly Black people, and you're going to go to Portland and find mostly white people, and then you're going to go to the South Valley in Albuquerque and find mostly Hispanic people. Like that's just how things work, I guess. But I think that we're capable, if you get to know somebody in person, to bond with that person and to appreciate the differences. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic in that. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, I guess that's it. There's subtopics in this that are just really interesting to me. I think that can go into there's gangs, fandom. Let's see what else we have: religion, racism, nationalism, chauvinism, cults. Like this is all so interesting to me, and I think that these all stem from this tribalistic sort of way of thinking. But yeah, it's just an observation that I had during this election. I hop onto Facebook and I have family members and friends who are very vocal about their support for one candidate or the other. Most of the time, the most vocal people are supportive of Trump, at least on my feed. And it just seems like the big takeaway from me kind of researching this was there was that sentence I read where, above all else, people are going with their tribe, and they're throwing out these ideas that maybe they feel are good and right. Like, for example, so I'm just going to drop I'm not going to try to be objective or anything like this right now. I'm just going to have my opinion. For the evangelical Christian church, the tribalism is so deep-rooted that they are following a person, Donald Trump, who to me kind of embodies what the Proverbs were talking about in the Old Testament against. Like if you read through Proverbs, it's like, don't be like this. And I think that who he's describing is the character of Donald Trump. And then you go to the New Testament and then you read about who Jesus is. And I'm trying my hardest to see, what do they see in Donald Trump that Jesus had? And it's almost the exact opposite, it seems like to me. And it might be my tribalistic sort of biases coming into play, but I'm really trying just to kind of be empathetic to a lot of thoughts and ideas, but it's hard for me. I just that one thing, like your tribe is more important than what you were taught like is good and right. So I don't know. Well, the election is happening in 6 days. 6 days from the recording of this. I think that our tribalism is going to be shown on front and center on November 2nd. Is that when it is? November 2nd? Let's see. I should know. November 3rd, Election Day. On Election Day, those tribalistic ideas are going to come out. They're going to come out on Facebook. I think if Biden wins, there's going to be a lot of people saying really mean things about people who voted for Trump. And if Trump wins, there's going to be a lot of people on Facebook saying really mean things about people who voted for Biden. There's going to be a lot of throwing it in other people's faces. I know that. Tribalism can be ugly, I think, today. Even when Trump contracted COVID, I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying they were hoping that he would die. Trey, Colin Jost, and is it Trey? Let's see. Weekend update on SNL. Weekend update is Colin Jost, Michael Che. He kind of made a joke in passing, that he was kind of hoping that the president would have died of COVID. So it's kind of, I don't know. That's there. It's very ugly on both ends, this tribalistic sort of idea. And I think that, it's kind of warm and fuzzy to think I want to be unified. We want to be unified as humans. But I think that's one of the hardest things to do for humans, is to kind of get us to be unified and to be in agreement about something. I think that the last time our country was in this kind of unified sort of area was after the attack on 9/11. I remember that as being kind of a unifying idea for the most part. There was support from coast to coast for our police and our firefighters in New York City. Front and center was on display the sacrifice that people were willing to do to save another person. So we saw that. We all saw that. And immediately after this was happening, people would put flags on their cars, not as a nationalism thing, I think at first, but as we are America, and we're together. Sort of the tribalism, I think that's the good pieces of tribalism, support, we're here together. We're supporting these, EMTs and firefighters and police officers who were risking everything to save other people who were, in these buildings. And I think pretty soon after that, so there was October, the World Series. And I think it was, I might be wrong. I'm gonna again Google in real time. I think it was the Yankees in the World Series. This was 2001 World Series. Yeah, the 2001 World Series was the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees. And one of the most kind of iconic images in my brain from that 2001 World Series was when George Bush threw the opening pitch. And, a lot of people didn't agree with George Bush and his ideas. He was a Republican president, but I felt like I felt like he was America's president at that moment, just at that moment. So it's kind of sad just thinking back, like we need a huge tragedy like that in order to bond us together. And right now, I think there's a tragedy happening with COVID, but it's dividing us. And there's a tragedy happening with our Black community being completely forgotten about, with our LGBTQ community being separated. And I don't know, like I would love to see our community being brought together more, but I want to be hopeful. It's hard to be hopeful right now, living in a United States that I feel is maybe one of the most divided countries that we've seen in a really long time. But I guess I'll keep hope that we're not as exclusive. Maybe we can figure this out as a people. I don't know. I think if we don't figure this out, it's going to be bad news for us. I think we've been here before, and the other instance I can think of is the Civil War. You had two groups of people who were definitely fighting against each other, literally fighting against each other, and I hope that we're not going to get to that point. So, again, thank you for joining me. I'm finding out really quickly that I don't know much, and I'm learning even my vocabulary in real time. So thank you for coming along and being patient, if you are even listening. But that's all I have for today.